Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to look at how to make the sound you've just heard in Ableton Live 12 using only stock plugins. This instrument doesn't actually use an instrument at all. It's centered around an echo with noise, and then lots of resonators built up on top of each other that can then be played back via MIDI. If you would like to recreate this instrument, you're going to need the following effects: echo, LFO, autopan, resonators, spectral resonator, EQ8, vocoder, OTT, glue compressor, hybrid reverb, and dynamic tube. So this is the instrument in its entirety. But let's bring it right back to beginning and start with the echo. So I'm going to turn all of the effects off after the echo. As you can hear, that instantly created noise. To set this up, first of all, load in echo and turn the feedback amount all the way down to 0, and turn the dry wet all the way up to 100%. Then go into character and go to noise and turn that on, and turn the amount all the way up. Now obviously that will always play back, regardless of whether the project is playing or you've got any note input. So if you want to turn it off, obviously you can use the amount to turn it down, or just click the noise button. Now at the moment that noise just sounds a little bit boring and nothing's really happening with it. So what we can do is we can attach an LFO tool, and in this case I've just kept it as a simple sine wave. I've set the LFO to 0.09 Hz and set 14% worth of jitter, and then applied that to the noise morph in the echo. And when we listen to that combined, as you can hear, it's sweeping through all of these different versions of noise within the echo device. I've kept the range between 0 and 100%, so I've captured all of the different morph types. The next thing we're going to look at is the resonators that start to build up the sound. So this bit is a little bit complicated, and I'm just going to turn an entire audio effect rack on to show you what I've got here. And I've got 8 chains with the exact same tools in each. We have 2 autopans and resonators in each one, but I'm going to explain what each thing does. So I'm not going to turn the echo on just yet, because as I'm going through this it will start to get a little bit annoying as you're hearing what's going on. So the first thing that I've set up here is the resonators, and I've set the note to C1 and I've set the gain to 6 decibels. Next to that I've left 2 and 3 on, and I've detuned amount 11 and minus 11 cents, and this in a sense adds a nice little bit of unison effect. I've also turned the filter to low pass mode and set the frequency to 607 Hz, and set the dry wet all the way to 100%. And the width to 100% as well. Make sure the dry wet is at 100%, otherwise you'll hear a little bit of the echo's normal noise coming through. Before this I've got 2 autopans, one set to a 16th note with the phase all the way down to 0 and the amount all the way up to 100%, so this basically acts as a tremolo instead of a panning function. After this I've added another autopan, slightly less amount, and I've set the rate to 3/4, so that's happening every 3 beats in a bar. And if I just solo this chain by itself and turn the echo back on, you can now hear the effect that's being applied. The next chain above it, I've changed the autopan timing amount on both autopans, but in the resonators I've set to G1, I've set the frequency to bandpass mode to 360 Hz, and I've also turned on all of the resonators within this on, and you can see the detune amount 11, minus 11 cents, minus 17 cents, and 17 cents. So this in a sense has a lot more unison happening within it. Again, width to 100% and dry wet to 100%. Let's listen to these two combined. As you can hear, we're starting to get a really nice moving resonator sound, one at C1 and the next one at G1, but the different autopan timings allows that movement between the two. These are both pan to center within the chain. Now after this, I've just kept going with the process 6 more times. This next one I've set to C2. I turned all of the unison off for this one, again with different autopan timing amounts, and I pan this one 19 left Next one 19 right, C2, but instead of detune this 17 cents above the original tone. So with these combined, we sort of have that unison effect between the left and the right. Next one 24 left, G2 with all of the unisons turned on and different auto pan amounts. 24 right in the next chain, different auto pan times, and again the resonator is set to C3. And the last two, I've got the first one panned 36 left, 2 auto pans again with different timings to the ones before them. This one's set to G3 with all of the unisons turned on, and the last one 36 right, again different auto pan timings. This one's set to C4 with all of the unisons turned on. Also, you might have noticed in each resonator the high would go up in the notes, the frequency amount I changed. So this one is a high pass filter set to 406 Hz, so it cuts out all of the lows. Same with the one before it. So these four altogether actually have the same frequency cut off set. And the one that's set to C2, we have a band pass set to 423 Hz, this one set to 360 Hz. And obviously the two before that I explained as well. Now I'm going to start playing back the echo. I'm going to start to turn each chain on individually so you can hear how all of this builds up together. And that is all 8 chains playing together, and as you can hear the different panning amounts, the different auto panning amounts as well, and obviously the different notes that we've included in the resonators. Now you don't have to copy these values exactly, I recommend you wouldn't actually, so you can get your own individual sound, but in the resonators one thing that I haven't explained is the decay amount. Have a play around with that. In each one of these I've just kept it set to 50, but change the decay amount, see what different kind of length of resonation you can create with it. Now at the moment as we listen to this, all it's playing is either C or G. So we're getting the first and the fifth of a C chord, but it's not changing note at all. And as I explained at the beginning of this video, we were going to get something that could be played back via MIDI. And this is where the Spectral Resonators come in next. So let's move to that. So here I have another audio effect rack with 3 chains, which I'm going to explain individually. I've got a Spectral Resonator in each of the chains. And the first one that I'm going to explain is set to granular mode. And in fact, let's turn on the echoes, because we can do that now, because with us having no MIDI playback at the moment, we won't hear the echoes and the resonators play. You can see them in these chains here, but this Spectral Resonator is requiring an input, so at the moment we can't hear anything happen. So I'm going to turn these 2 chains off and go back to the first one, and in this Spectral Resonator I set the mode to MIDI. I'm taking the MIDI from the channel that these are actually playing on, because I've put this on a MIDI channel. Now obviously if you put this on an audio channel you'll have to have a MIDI channel as its input, but for ease of use I just put all of these effects on a MIDI channel and then set them input from the channel itself. So at the moment it's set from 1 MIDI, and I've set it from post effects. Now that doesn't really matter for what I'm doing right now because I don't have an arpeggiator attached to this one, so I just set it to post effects. And I've also set it to polyphonic mode with a note amount of 8. I'm not really playing more than 8 notes in a chord. Now if we just listen to this chain by itself as I've set it up right now, this is what we get. Now we could leave that there and we've got a fantastic instrument that we can play around with, and this could be used in many different sort of genres like lo-fi hip-hop, anything that's chill and ambient, that kind of thing. And how I got to this sound, I set the mode to granular, I set the decay to 394 milliseconds, transposed to 24 semitones, and the thing that causes the real impact to this sound is I stretched all of the harmonics down minus 100%. If I put this back to 0 you'll hear the difference. It really kicks in that granular sound. But if I stretch that all the way back down to minus 100, you can really hear that it's just cutting out all of that top end and really just rounding it out and smoothing it together. The last thing I did is I shifted again 12 semitones. I set the input send to 24 decibels because I found once I stretched all of the harmonics down at minus 100%, it became very, very quiet. So this input sound is to bring all of that back up. I set the unison to 4 and the unison amount to 0.4%. Dry wet to 100% as well. After this I just added an OTT just to embellish the harmonics a little bit more, especially in the top end, and the mids, because again it was a little bit quiet. And again, this is what that sounded like. The next spectral resonator along from this sounds like this. The main difference here is I stretched up 100% instead of down. I kept the transpose at 0 semitones and shifted at 12 semitones. Decay 329 milliseconds. And I dampened the low frequencies 100%. I mainly wanted this to sort of sit in the mids and the highs a bit more above that first spectral resonator that we've just heard. Kept the unison and the unison amount the same. I had to turn the input send down because this one was obviously a little bit louder. And then after that an EQ8 just to basically take out the lows and shape the mids a little bit more. The last spectral resonator we have sounds like this. And this is more of a full range one just to sort of fill out the entire spectrum. I've kept the mode of this spectral resonator to wander, the decay to 360 milliseconds, dampened the low frequencies 100%, input send at 0 decibels, and again unison and unison amount set to the same as the others. If we combine all three of these together, this is what we get. Now each one of these chains by themselves, you could play them individually, but for this I wanted to get a really full-bodied sound with different things happening in the lows, the mids and the highs. The next thing we move to is a vocoder, and this is just to add a little bit more nuance to the sound, a little bit more interesting movement. If I set this to dry wet to 100%, you'll hear what I mean. This is just there to add a little bit more crispness, a bit more sparkle, a little bit more interest to the sound. For the input I've set it to modulator and the carrier to enhance. I've set the sensitivity of the unvoiced to 100% and brought up the unvoiced to minus 31 decibels. Set the bands to 40, and the next thing that I did is curved all of the low end out. I set the bandwidth to retro, brought the release down to 55.6 milliseconds and the formant up to 12.6, and brought the dry wet down to around 31% because I didn't want it to be fully vocoded sound. So this is all of that in combination. This vocoder is very subtle, but it just adds a little bit of extra that I wanted to have in this instrument. After this we have another OTT, again just to embellish the mids and the highs a little bit more and shape them. I've set the time amount to 268% but brought the amount all the way down to 30, so it isn't fully going through the multiband compressor. And then after this a glue compressor with soft clip turned on and the makeup gain turned up by 3.17 decibels. Just to glue everything together so there's no real large spikes in amplitude. Next thing we have after this is one of my favourite things to use, hybrid reverb, but I'm not actually using the convolution reverb at all in this. I've set the blend to 100% to shimmer and I've set the decay to 2.12 seconds. Now I really like this shimmer algorithm because when you set it to 100%, it makes almost anything sound like an organ. I just think it has a really, really cool sound. But if we bring the dry wet back down to 34%, around where it was, I've set the shimmer to 62%, diffusion to 100%, pitch all the way up to 12 semitones. I think that's really all that I changed. In the EQ, I refined by lifting up the highs a little bit, shaping the mids, and cutting out some of the low end. Next thing we have after this is a dynamic tube. In a way this is sort of like a saturator. It's emulating a tube that you would find in a guitar amp, for example. Set the dry wet to 50.8%. Set the mode to B and the bias to 53%. I also set the envelope to 143%, and this is mainly just to sort of dirty up the sound and the reverb that it was running through as well. Because not that it was sounding clean, I just wanted to give it a little bit more of a grittiness to it. Again, a very, very subtle tool, but it just adds a little bit of extra character. After this we have an EQ8, taking out a little bit of the lows, but it just got a little bit too much in the top end. And then finally another glue compressor set to soft clip, so it doesn't go past 0 decibels, with the makeup gain set to 4.92 decibels. That was just to bring, in a nutshell, that's the entire, in a sense, quote-unquote instrument, because realistically we don't actually have an instrument in this at all. As you can see right at the beginning of the chain, there isn't an instrument on this MIDI channel. Now you could add a Vital or a Serum or anything that comes within Ableton Live, for example, or any of the other instruments that are in Ableton Live. But if you want to have an instrument without actually having the instrument, all you need is the sound input, and in this sense echo with its noise. And that's how I As always with these videos in this series, the thesis that I try to get to and showcase is how much fun you can have and how much potential you have with just the free stock instruments that come within Ableton Live. Or if you don't use Ableton Live, have a look at things that work within your DAW. Things that you might not have used, things that you might have looked over or bypassed and gone for something that was more third party instead. Nothing wrong with using third party, but again, just to showcase how much you can do with what you've got in your DAW, and you don't have to go and spend an absolute fortune on all of these crazy instruments that are out there. If you want to use them, that's cool, but again, look what you can do with what comes within the DAW itself. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, God bless and goodbye.